are live. Welcome to the Mango Publishing Heart Wisdom panel. Super, super excited to have these wonderful repeat guests that I've missed you both so much. Susyn Reeve and Reverend Maggie Oman Shannon are here. We are talking about what's next. Follow your heart. And I love that. Whoops, here's Brenda. Yay.
Hello.
We just got started. Perfectly on time. I was just introducing our wonderful Susyn and Maggie and saying how great it is to have them back. It's been a while. And our topic, I think, is just going to be amazing because it's like all these questions, right? What does it mean to follow your heart? How do you do that? You know, what if your mind doesn't want to follow your heart, right? There's so many different things, places we could go. And I'm excited to see where that is. So welcome, and welcome to Brenda, who is the Mango Publishing publisher. Happy to have you. Oh, I see Krishna on LinkedIn. Hi, Krishna. Glad you're here. So before we even launch into introductions, Susyn is going to start us off. Maggie's going to close us out today. I know Susyn's going to start us off to just land us here.
Yes, to land all of us here. So I invite you to close your eyes or have a soft focus and focus on your breath. Actually, follow the path of your breath as it enters your body through your nose, circulates throughout your body, and leaves your body through your mouth. And be aware that as you focus on your breath, you are in the present moment. And the present moment is always our greatest point of power. And on your next out breath, surrender to the support of the seat beneath your body and the floor beneath your feet. Just sigh into the support. And as you experience the physical support beneath your body and the floor beneath your feet, be aware that this physical support is a reminder of the invisible resources and support always available to you. And in the next few seconds, become aware of any questions that you may have about what's next and leading with your heart. And with your questions and comments in your awareness, gently take a full cleansing, renewing deep breath. And at your own speed, just to focus your attention on being fully in your body. You may want to wiggle your toes, your fingers, stretch, and then gently, very gently, open your eyes and notice what you see as though you're seeing the room that you're in for the very first time. Welcome.
Oh, Susyn, that could not have been more perfect. Thank you.
Excellent.
And you know, when I opened my eyes, I saw Susyn, Maggie, and Brenda's beautiful faces. That was a treat. That was a treat. That was such a treat. Thank you. So, Susyn, would you like to start us off by introducing yourself? And I have one question I'd love for you to respond to in your introduction, which is, what does it mean to you to follow your heart?
Okay, and I have an answer for that. First of all, thank you so much, Sherry, for this opportunity. And Brenda, great to see you. And Brenda, thank you for years ago introducing Maggie and me together for our books. Okay, so what does it mean to follow your heart? I mean, quite simply, it means to live a wholehearted life, which is a life of passion and purpose grounded in love. So following now introduce myself. So let me, and it goes with what I think, leading with an open heart is I am the author of Heart Healing, has many stickers on it that Mango published many, many years ago. And so I'm an author and I'm also an elder. And at this time of my life, I find that the tasks of my life are to share the wisdom of my experience, decades of experience, and to be a mighty expression of love in the world. And that expression of love is continuously evolving. It does not mean I walk on water. It does mean that when I am off center, when I am not connected with love, I notice it sooner and I go inside before I blame others, and I'm willing to be with the discomfort until I hear the voice of my heart, the wisdom of my heart to guide me. So right now I'm talking to you from Portugal, where I am in the home of my beau of just about 1 year, and it is nighttime here.
And we are extra super grateful that you were willing to be with us at night in that whole different time zone. Thank you, Susyn.
You're welcome.
I wrote in the comments what you said. I just thought that was so beautiful. I mean, so much of what you said was beautiful, but to be a mighty expression of love in the world. And that pause that you talked about, right? Like, and I thought when you were saying that, goodness, what a world it would be if we all prescribed to that, how different things might look. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hey, Maggie, welcome back to you with your beautiful colors. Hello.
It's interesting. This particular platform shows more of my space than Zoom does. So you can actually see my Frida mermaid in the background.
I know.
And my art collection in back of me. Great to be here. Thank you so much. And lovely to be with Susyn. Again, we meet once a month. And so I have the pleasure of her company pretty regularly. And Brenda, great to see you. I've missed talking to you. So really nice to be with all of you today. And I'm here because I thought, what a great question. I'm currently living the question of what's next. So I'm going to be listening for little nuggets of wisdom, as well as everybody here. I am a retired congregational minister. I'm a unity minister and retired from congregational ministry a year ago. I'm also an artist and the author of 9 books. My most recent book is Have Hope. And it was really fun sort of preparing for this time together today to look through these books for little bits of wisdom, guidance. I picked a few poems from Prayers for Healing, which was my very first book that Brenda oversaw back in 1997, and looking for, what sages in the past have said about following your heart and what comes next.
I love that, Maggie. And I love that you're holding that question for yourself. And same thing I asked Susyn, just to start us off. What does it mean to you to follow your heart?
It's something I've always done. I had an interesting experience recently. I was talking to my 19-year-old daughter, and we were talking about making decisions. And I told her, I've always followed my heart. And I actually moved. This was way back in the day when I was a magazine editor, but I moved different places across the country, usually because of a guy. And she said, I was trying to make the wonderful point that, I don't have any regrets because I moved to see if that relationship would work, and it didn't work. So I would go to the next job or place when, that particular cycle, professionally as well, felt like it was time to move. And my daughter was not impressed. She said, "Oh, I would not have done that." So all my great wisdom about, hey, follow your heart and then you'll have no regrets was kind of poo-pooed by my 19-year-old business major who's very focused on building a career and making money. But I've always done it and I don't have any regrets. I think that when you follow your heart, it puts you in a place of knowing that you did everything you could do to explore a calling or explore a whispering or an invitation. And I feel like I've done that my whole life. It's led me into a lot of different professions, a lot of different places, as I just mentioned, but I feel like I've led a really full life. And so it's kept me engaged and excited about the art of living.
Wow. Wow, that is a testament to following one's heart, isn't it? Like engaged and excited about the art of living. I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that you each brought something to read, but first I'm going to pull us over here to Brenda to say hi. And same question to you. And also, please do introduce yourself, Brenda. But what does it mean to you to follow your heart?
Well, I am the publisher of Mango Publishing Group, but I also Canary Press, which is kind of how I met both of these wonderful women. And living from your heart to me means using your inner voice and your intuition as a guide. And I really do that. I mean, to a certain extent, I don't even know any better. I've done it since I was a little kid, but I noticed that if I did it that, that was the right way to go. And I did want to say that I met Maggie and Susyn at Old Canary, which was pre-Mango, and actually Susyn was Red Will Weiser in Canary. And I was really, my intuition said, ooh, you need to get to know them, talk to them, pick their enormous brains and hearts. And so and I love their book ideas. I mean, they're fountains of creativity. And so I've known and really dug Susyn's sort of motto of being a mighty expression of love in the world. And I would say that whether it's Prayers for Healing or the several books, at least two, I think, that have hope in the title, I think that Maggie Oman Shannon is a mighty expression of hope in the world.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Brenda, because I actually have 3 rings on to remind myself of what I want to be in the world, and it's beauty, hope, and magic. So you got it.
My intuition was right.
It was.
Hey, Brenda, this just occurred to me. I know what I would answer, but what would you most say you are a mighty expression of?
Oh my. I think creativity, and creativity doesn't always mean artistry and writing books and poetry. Sometimes it means when things are tough and somebody, your friend or somebody really important to you has a real problem, and it's oh my, what do we do? And I have come to know as I age and sage that when sort of when things are, when there's an emergency or a crisis, that's kind of when I'm at my best. And I get very calm. I mean, this isn't anything I'm controlling. It's just something I've observed that happens over the years. I get very calm. My mind gets very clear, and I kind of know exactly what to do. So that's a form of creativity too that I've only recently honored in myself.
Whoa. And I love that. I can see that 100%, Brenda, but I also love that that kind of follows our theme, right? That in those moments of, crisis or confusion or what have you, chaos, that it's like, I'm guessing part of your calm comes from knowing that place in your heart where you know what to do or you know what to say. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, there's even been occasions where, like, I saw somebody being hit and run by a car, like a bicyclist being hit and run by a car, and like, no one is prepared for that. This was in San Francisco, just off Market Street, and I, like, again, like, I got very calm, and I knew to ask for other drivers to block that car that was trying to get away, to stop
Yes.
them from getting away. And then I was helping the bicyclist, get out of the middle of the street. And then while calling 911, like all within like a second, I like barked out the orders to my fellow like drivers, and they all were happy to help. It was like very smooth. And like, but like, it could have been like, I mean, it was an unexpected emergency, and I don't know, dropped down wisdom or channeled information or whatever, but I knew exactly what to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I know it's a weird one to bring up, but I feel at Heart Wisdom, we can talk about anything. And that's sort of that's kind of like a way of like, like that's an expression of love, helping people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is. And also, where I went with that too is that it's also an expression of all of your years of sort of practicing paying attention. This is my projection on you, Brenda, but it's like that one has to be present to be able to be that kind of person in an emergency. And that doesn't just happen. That doesn't just happen, that we're just, usually it's some practice. So, oh, that was fun. I'm glad you shared that.
What I'm also struck with, Brenda, from what you said is honoring creativity, and not creativity as a painter or a writer, creativity in any moment. Really, you mentioned emergencies, and that when we are connected with the wisdom of our heart, which has to be practiced over and over again, to trust that, whether we call it intuition, inner guidance, our angels, whatever, is a reminder that every moment we're creating.
Yeah.
I love that, Susyn. That was beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And it means that every moment we get a new chance, right? So that's the other beautiful thing about it. Oh, new moment. What's my heart saying? What's my intuition saying? What's the angels, or however you phrase it for yourself. So yeah. Oh,
yeah, perfect.
It's the magic of the Heart Wisdom panel, always afoot. I love it. So I know we talked a little bit before we got started that you each brought something to share with us. And that's one of my favorite times, is to hear, your author words. So Susyn, do you want to share with us what you brought us?
Yes. So this is from my book, Heart Healing, The Power of Forgiveness to Heal a Broken Heart. And I'm starting with actually a closed heart, because in order to follow the wisdom of our heart, we have to know what the feeling of an open heart feels like. So many of us are walking around with wounded hearts from the pains, hurts, betrayals, regrets, shame, resentments, and anger attached to recent and past wounds. Each of these unhealed wounds, more importantly, the beliefs we have attached to them, constrict the flow of love, of giving and receiving love in our lives. When the flow of love is blocked, our hearts emotionally, spiritually, and physically eventually become armored up.
Hmm.
A broken heart generates feelings which may include anger, fear, despair, rage, shame, and hopelessness. Letting go of our attachments to the story of our wounds and to the beliefs that keep them oozing is the path to healing. It is an open hearted willingness to forgive, which is the emotional equivalent of the cardiac rehabilitation prescribed when someone experiences a physical heartbreak. So to follow our hearts, we really need to check in to see, where are we? Are we armored? Are we broken? Not realizing that even when our heart is broken, it's through the brokenness that the light, that love can come in. And an open heartedness is really what Brenda described, what Maggie described, in terms of how Maggie said she's lived her life with an open heart. It's knowing to listen on the inside. And I always thank my heart, or the loving energy of the universe, for speaking loud enough for me to hear and clear enough for me to understand.
Oh, so beautiful. Perfect. That was a perfect passage to start us. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that question, asking ourselves, like, where am I with my heart? Or where's, where's my heart and how's its condition today? That's so great. Yeah.
It reminded me of a teaching by my mentor and teacher, the late Angeles Arian. And she had a set of questions that seemed really relevant to what Susyn just said, and you did, Sherry, to ask yourself, where am I full-hearted?
Yeah.
Where am I wholehearted? I think. Where am I strong-hearted? And where am I think it must have been open-hearted. So that idea that there are different ways to calibrate that idea of open-heartedness. And she had that interesting wisdom to add to the question of, how am I with my heart?
Yeah, I love that. Before I have you read what you brought, Maggie, that just brought up for me that it's like in asking those questions, that connected me to my heart. And, that to me is one answer to how in the world do we follow our hearts? And I think that for me was like, oh, first and foremost, simply check in, right? And almost ask, ask to be in the presence of my own heart, or my, again, however each person phrases it. But that was beautiful. That's a great first step. And Maggie, I think you may have brought us some poetry. Did you?
I did. To this question of what's next, I just quickly looked through Prayers for Healing, which is now 26 years old. But I found a couple short poems that seemed relevant to the expiration. And one was by a man named Jim Cohn, who wrote, "Releasing the separate one is a difficult knot. Finding yourself is something only you can do. Imagine yourself coming back 10 years from today through time to help you where you must now be." And I love that idea of accessing our future self. I've done that. In fact, I did it recently in a workshop about having our future self, writing to that person and then receiving a response, and a powerful practice of imagining yourself 10 years down the line. And the other one, let's see, trying to decide if I want to do that one. I think I'm going to do another one that I had picked out, and this has a story behind it. Actually, it's from Jack Kornfield, who people in the Bay Area and beyond know. He's an author as well, and a Buddhist monk, I believe. And this is a beautiful poem that he wrote. It's actually a blessing in the quest of following our heart. Just as the soft rains fill the streams, pour into the rivers, and join together in the oceans, so may the power of every moment of your goodness flow forth to awaken and heal all beings, those here now, those gone before, those yet to come. By the power of every moment of your goodness, may your heart's wishes be soon fulfilled, as completely shining as the bright full moon, as magically as by a wish-fulfilling gem. By the power of every moment of your goodness, may all dangers be averted and all disease be gone. May no obstacle come across your way. May you enjoy fulfillment and long life. For all in whose heart dwells respect, who follow the wisdom and compassion of the way, may your life prosper in the 4 blessings of old age, beauty, happiness, and strength. So a blessing written by Jack Kornfield, but what a beautiful kind of invitation that by following our heart, we can be on that path that he was writing about.
Thank you. I felt blessed when you were reading that. That was beautiful.
Thank you. I did too. You know, it's like I get goosebumps when I read certain things, and I love that.
I wanted to, before we get too much further in, because this was one of my questions before we started, and we've kind of alluded to it, which is this for any of you who want to respond, which is that, is it the same thing to follow our intuition, to check in with our highest self, to be with the divine, to listen to angels? Like, right, are these all the same things, or are they different? Is following your heart specific in some way?
I think it's a great question. I think there's ways that you can kind of parse it out. I want to hear what Susyn has to say, but I'm just hearkening back to the story I told about how, for me, following my heart sometimes meant following a guy to another city, and my daughter was horrified and like, wow, I wouldn't have done that, you know. So obviously she's leading with her head. She has other things that are driving her, and I think there might have been times when I followed my heart or my emotion, but not necessarily my intuition. You know, like maybe I kind of overrode what I was being told because my heart was longing for, you know, love, a relationship. But that's a quick take on your question, which I think is a good one. I want to hear what Susyn has to say about that.
You know, I think in the purest sense, they're the same. I agree with Maggie, because I've also followed men in my life, where the call and the desire to be loved and loving was in some ways immature. I was immature in that. And yet it was through those relationships that I, over time, learned about going inside.
Mm.
And so it's very different for me in the relationship I'm in now than actually in my 2 marriages. And that isn't to say that I wasn't following my heart. It's to say that I was following it to the extent that I was aware of what love is, of what my intuition was telling me, and so many times just growing up at the time I grew up, where, you know, be logical, be realistic, stop being a dreamer. I was told that a lot. in my life. So I wanted to be serious, that I would give my head much more credence. And what I've learned, and again, I use all the words you mentioned, Sherry. When I speak, I interchange them. I had to learn, because I'm someone who consciously eliminated the word love from my vocabulary when I was a teenager, because I had made the decision as a child that I wasn't loved, which was not true, but I didn't know it at the time. So I went on a long journey in retrospect in truly learning, what do I mean by love? And one of the things, and I appreciate that Mango did this in the publishing, is that I make a distinction in the book of when I capitalize the word love and when I use it to say, oh, I really love this piece of cake. I love the taste of this pie. Compared to that open-hearted acceptance and forgiveness and kindness and generosity that's given without keeping score.
Beautiful.
I agree with both of the wise women. But to me, it's sort of like other people's reactions when I'm following my heart can be interesting. So for me, when following your heart is about following the feelings and not logic.
Yeah.
So, through probably for 30 years, I'll be going some way following my heart. It can be in relationships and friendships, in work, like in like where I live or like doing decisions. And people will say like, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. And I'll say like, it feels like the right thing to do,
Yes.
and again, like, people will be like, like looking at me like, oh gosh, there she goes again. And then it'll end up being the right thing to do. And oftentimes, I mean, it can even be something, again, like, it's funny, like I keep coming back to helping people, but like, a friend like made like a terrible life decision and was completely broke and like needed money. I agree that it's not a great practice to loan money to your friends, but they were in such a bad situation that I did it. And people were like, you're never going to get that money back. And I was like, no, I believe I will. I'm not worried about it. Like, it was the right thing to do. Like, it always, like, that's my motto is when I'm following my heart, is that it's the right thing to do. And I did get paid back in full. And people were like, I never thought you would see that money again. And I said, well, in truth, like, if it had taken a really long time, that was fine. It was just that I really believed and still believe it was the right thing to do, and that person needed help, and they were honorable, and it had a happy ending.
Yeah. And you're bringing to mind yet another thing I was thinking about before we all met. So thank you for that, Brenda, which is, I suspect the four of us have practiced quite a bit listening to and following our hearts. I also suspect that there may be people like Maggie's daughter out there, right, who are kind of more in that camp of like, it's about the logical mind, right? And maybe there are people who are thinking like, oh, I tend to listen to the logical mind, but I kind of like what these ladies are talking about, So what guidance do you have for people who may not yet be practiced in this? Because for me, I think one of the reasons I trust it is because, like Brenda was pointing out, time and time again, when we start to see that, like, wow, that turned out pretty well, when I followed my heart, I like that. But if you don't have that experience, so I'm looking for, I guess, like maybe some guidance for people who are newly practicing following their hearts.
Go ahead.
I'm going to give an example that it's And I remember I told my grandchildren when they were quite young this, and they rolled their eyes at me. And I said, a prayer that I have when something is missing. It could be my keys. It just happened with an earring the other day. I say the prayer, reveal yourself.
Mm.
And then I imagine that I have it. And in my imagination, I'm saying, oh, there it is. So it happened the other day. We were away for the weekend, came back. I had put a pair of beautiful gold earrings into my glass case because I wanted to wear these because these were more fun to me. And I opened the glass case to take out my glasses. And then later on that day, I opened it to take out the earring, and there was only one there.
Wow.
And I said, reveal yourself. And I imagined finding it. And I knew where my glass case had been. It was nowhere. Because the apartment is being painted when we're away, yesterday I moved something, and there was my earring. And I want to say, when I first told my granddaughter this, when she was about 8, she was looking for something. I said, say, reveal yourself. And she said, reveal yourself. And then immediately said, I still can't find it.
Oh.
And so it is choosing something that you don't have this like loads of attachment to, and say it. Like in the first book I wrote, it was spare change. I was talking about how, what we think manifests when we believe it. And I made up a story about spare change. Like, imagine you found spare change. Just imagine it, not where it was, but just put that thought in your mind. And the next morning at the gym, I got on the elliptical, and I was putting my water into the cup holder, and I heard a sound, and there was spare change in there. Whoa, this really works. Glad I wrote about this. And then I left the elliptical, took my water, forgot to take this change, and I'm working out on another piece of equipment. And I think, is this change still going to be there? Is it going to be there? Is it going to be there? And I walked back. The elliptical happened to be empty when I finished the previous piece of equipment, and there it was. And all I did was imagine and trusted, and not how I was going to find it, where I was going to find it, how much I was going to find. So my advice in terms of following your heart, if you get the impulse, you think of someone, I ought to call this person, and they call, acknowledge, whoa.
Yeah.
It works. It's the acknowledgement that's as crucial as the person calling you or finding the spare change or the earring.
Love that. That was so beautiful. I love that story. And I love what you said about the acknowledgement is the important part, and there is something about, we all know that, what you focus on expands, right? That's like such a classic, yeah, this is beautiful.
So I want to add something that maybe is a bit more practical before you get to the prayer, and it's something that I found. I'm like going through all my stuff as I enter this new chapter of my life, and I found something that I wrote back in 2002. My business name is The New Story. And so back in 2002, I wrote a little essay that I put on a bookmark called 5 Ways to Start Creating Your New Story Today. And it was interesting because, I read that poem about communing with your future self. And I found this and I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's like my past self is coming to me now to kind of give me some hints for where to go today. But the 5 ways, one was pay attention to your thoughts. And it's that same kind of thing that you were just referencing, that energy goes where our attention is, and to focus on what it is that we are wanting, to pay attention to our words, both the conversations that we have with others and the ones that we have with ourselves, and just kind of notice where our thoughts and our inner conversation is going. But more specifically to following your heart, notice what kinds of messages and images you surround yourself with. So as you can tell, my whole space is a very inspirational place for me, with messages that inspire me to go forward. The next one was notice what inspires you. Become aware of the things that light up your heart. And that's going to give you a sense of how to follow your heart. And then finally, let yourself dream. So if I had all the money in the world, all the time, what would I be doing? What is it that I would want to be doing? And as I wrote, this can be an interesting exercise to start tracking where your heart's desire truly lies. So I was really thought, that's so cool. All right. Well, that was 21 years ago that I came up with that. And I'm finding it helpful today.
But Maggie, I love that. It's so beautiful too. I mean, this whole piece, I just love the magic of what happens in a circle or a space, or when we create, right, this empty space for life to come in. It's like that you told us that beautiful story about connecting with your future self. And then it's like this beautiful wisdom from Maggie of 21 years ago coming in. I love that. And it made me think that when you said, I think you said, pay attention to what lights up your heart. Was that the language? Yeah. And people who know me know I use the expression pinpricks of light or sparkles a lot. Those things that just, I don't know, it's different for everyone, but they sparkle, right? And to me, it's like that. It's like that which lights up your heart. It's like when we pay attention, inevitably, to me, they lead us somewhere, and it's the sparkle that I do feel in my heart. It's not necessarily a mental sparkle, So what about you, Brenda? Did you have anything you wanted to add about that, about the logical mind versus the heart?
I have both. I think we all have both. Sometimes they don't get along that well. I try to use a blend. I mean, for example, at work, publishing is both an art and a science. And so oftentimes there's meetings that we have that are very nuts and bolts and details about the warehouse and just all this kind of stuff. So, I would say that at my day job, I get the opportunity to blend the art and the science. And I'm more intuitive than I am logical. And so when I can do that, keep them in equal balance, I think that's when I'm at my best personally and professionally. So for me, it's don't go too far in one direction, try to find the balance.
I'd love to add something that listening to all of you popped up for me. And one of the things that I've noticed is when my head speaks, it's a long story about why it's a good idea. My heart speaks, it's a very simple message. Go right.
Yes.
Trust this. And that something that I learned from a teacher of mine, Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the 4 Agreements, is we have it wrong. That usually people are following the guidance from here and then trying to put their heart into it. But it's listening to our heart and then having our heart guide our head in terms of a next clear step. What to do. So what you just said, it's the marriage of the two.
Mhm.
What's different than I had grown up with, that I think that many of us have grown up with, I started with the logic, and it wasn't always satisfying.
Mm.
Start with my heart, even though there may be obstacles along the way. Oftentimes when there are the obstacles, it's because I think I have to take a leap rather than just what's the next step.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so helpful, Susyn.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I don't know why it took me here, but I'm going to say it because it did, which is that I'm sure that we've all had these experiences of like when the crazy ideas come from the like the heart is suddenly like, hey, do this. And we're all like, what? You know, in the mind, at least in my case, oftentimes the mind's like, what? No, that's not safe, or that's not how it's done is a big one. That's not what people do. And I think I may have told this a few weeks ago with somewhere, maybe here, maybe somewhere else, but that I was hired for a speaking engagement and I barely knew the contact, right? We had just had a couple emails. And I got the idea to leave her a voice note because we had this great talk and I loved her joy and I wanted to just leave her a voice note so she could hear it. And in the midst of leaving the voice note, dropped in, right? Like to Susyn's point, it wasn't a mind thing. I knew this. I was like, hey, you should recite her that poem. And I was like, you know, the mind, of course, was like, that's crazy. You don't even know this person. That's a weird thing to do. But I did it because I like to practice, right? I like to practice following. And so I left her, sent her the voice note and recited a poem. And 2 minutes later, this exuberant email. Oh my gosh, I'm a poet. I don't know how you knew that, you know, it's like just, you know, like that. And she was so excited. It changed our whole from this like, you know, nice kind of like contract talk to real people. And it just, there's something about that I know for me, that's not uncommon, that the heart is just like super smart. And the mind
Heart
is like,
wisdom.
Oh, Brenda, I didn't even connect that. Thank you. That is so perfect, right? Holy
Yes.
cow. You're the one who came up with Heart Wisdom as the title.
At the beginning of the pandemic, yeah, I which was an emergency, and I guess maybe that was, you know, me like, okay, we got an emergency, what do we do? And I just thought, gotta stay connected to people. That's how we're gonna get through it.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that. I love that you just connected that, right? So I guess I was putting that out there because I love to watch, just like Susyn said, acknowledge, right? I love to acknowledge when the heart is right. Because my conditioned mind or logical mind, whatever you want to call it, was like, no way are we doing that. So yeah, do you guys have examples that come to mind of that? Like when something, I mean, maybe following men somewhere is one of those. I don't know, but
Well, I've got, you know, more healthy ones probably, but before I go there, I just wanted to say that I find this conversation helpful because I think that one thing that's becoming clarified for me is that often we say the heart or the head, right? And we're talking about the emotions versus logic. But in the deeper context, if you want to do the capital L love, not just the little l, which leads us to the divine, that idea of being divinely guided or divinely inspired. Just a little piece that I wanted to add was that the whisper of capital L love or the divine, however you define that, is going to be gentle. It's going to be kind. It's not going to be shaming, blaming, harsh. There's a different quality to the message that one's going to find. But what I was thinking of in terms of just an answer to your question, Sherry, is that I'm finding more and more that usually I make decisions pretty quickly. Like if I know that well, and it feels like it's a deeper kind of wisdom. And the best example is a training that I did recently that already has enriched me quite a bit. But when I found out about it, it was just crazy. It was like it was going to be in early January. It was going to be in Utah. It was going to be, an investment. There were all these things that the head could have said, no, that doesn't make any sense. And it was like, I just knew this is something I want to do. This is something that is right for me. And I did it. And I'm finding that, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I was right, or the wisdom was right, that it was something that was, is proving to enrich my life quite a bit. So I love that that sense of evolution or progression, that the more that we trust that or listen to that, higher, heart, the capital L love, the divine. It really does clarify. It can cut out a lot of the competing noise and judgments. It's just like, no, that's it. I'm doing it.
Listening to you, what's going through my mind is, and it reminds me of what you read that you wrote 21 years ago, and also your exercise that you suggested about having your future self write to you is, and this relates to what's next. 15 years ago, I had this idea that what I wanted on my business card was, I wanted to say godmother, but I felt shy about it. It didn't seem serious and professional enough. And then I got the nerve to do it, but not much more than put it on there. And recently, I was asked to speak on a podcast called Wish Beads. And to prepare for it, I listened to some of the previous podcasts. And as I listened, I heard godmother, the best I can describe it, in neon. And not only was it knocking on my door, but the door opened. And it's changed my life. And that was, maybe 5 weeks ago. And I'm saying this because just in terms of the what next piece, I recognize this and I felt ready to do it now. I wasn't beating myself up. Well, you heard that 15 years ago. Why is it taking you so long? Blah, 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 blah. But I'm ready now. I'm ready to own that I am a godmother. And that's the task of this time of my life. And there's a lot of fairy in there. There will definitely be wand making as part of this. But in the what next and following our hearts, it doesn't mean that the next day our life changes. And sometimes it does. I mean, it will be in the perfect timing, and to trust that, and no beating ourselves up. Why didn't I listen sooner? Because it's like a caterpillar. A caterpillar once is in a chrysalis and dissolves. And yet in that chrysalis are something called imaginal discs.
Yeah.
They're the programming. And if someone tries to open up the cocoon too soon, that butterfly doesn't live. It needs to get stronger and push its wings against the cocoon. And so listening to our hearts and really hearing plants a seed. So over the years, as godmother has popped into my mind, and just about 5 weeks ago, when the door opened again, I knew I was ready. And I know that I am ready.
Oh, Susyn, I got chills when you were telling that. That's so beautiful. Wish Beads is a mango book, isn't it, Brenda?
Yes, I was wondering if that was, I think I did remember that she has a podcast.
She does, yeah. I just love that, It's so beautiful. Oh, that's so lovely, Susyn. Such a great thing. What's next? That we could plant a tiny little seed, right? And again, I go back to like what we were saying at the very start of this conversation, which is simply by connecting that, that maybe that word or image will drop in. Yeah. And that to trust the timing.
I think that's a big one. That's something that I'm in right now. And it's so uncomfortable because I have been so driven for the last 25 years of my life. I mean, I was like uber busy, uber engaged, and now not having a 9-to-5 job. Actually, it's more than that, but not having a daily job to report to. I'm trying to let myself be comfortable with the unfolding, and it can be uncomfortable. I have felt uncomfortable since I've gone from 60 to 0. So I appreciate the message about trusting the timing. I think that's an important point.
That's beautiful. And I know, Maggie, that you've come with us with a way to sort of close out our circle, and it seems to me like maybe that was a beautiful place to pause and have you do that.
Sure, I would love to. This is another poem. This is by the wonderful late poet John O'Donohue, who's somebody I always return to when I'm in need of some heart wisdom. And I actually had the pleasure of sitting next to him at a luncheon when I worked at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I was lucky enough to be seated next to him, and he was such a lovely, modest man. But boy, what a legacy he's left us with all the wisdom of his work. So for our exploration of what's next, I chose a blessing that he wrote called For a New Beginning. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. For a New Beginning by John O'Donohue.
Maggie, that is one of my all-time favorite poems, and perfect. I just think it's perfect for this conversation. That was beautiful.
Awesome, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we have 1 minute left of this beautiful circle. I'm so grateful to each of you. Was there anything that you just feel like, wait, I have to say this before we close?
Gratitude to you and Brenda. Brenda is also the fullest expression of giving others expression. And I know how grateful all three of us are to Brenda for giving us an outlet for our creativity. And my dear friend Susyn, I feel very grateful. And I think possibly that's also something to keep in mind as we try to follow our heart is, where do we feel grateful? What makes our hearts full with thankfulness?
Thank you, Maggie, for the poetry. I'm so nourished.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw who was going to be here today, there was no way, didn't matter what the time was in Portugal, because I actually thought it would have been an hour later than now, since we haven't changed our time yet here. And thank you for this opportunity to be with all of you. I'm nourished.
No.
Yeah, my heart is full. It was a little empty when we started, and it's full now. So thank you.
Me too. And I feel like almost giddy. So I just thank you. I know what it is. I know it's your smiles, it's your faces, it's this conversation, it's connecting to our hearts, it's the poetry, the meditation, all of it. Thank you. There's, to me, nothing more important than spaces like this. And I'm so grateful to Mango Publishing for allowing us and encouraging this. So until we all meet again, which I know we will, lots of love to you, everybody. Heart wisdom. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.